Welcome to ConnectU. This is your host, Tyler Henry, head strength coach for Momentum Sports Canada. And today we have on set Chase Barber. Chase and I go back working together in 2019 at Texas Christian University as interns. And ever since, probably more importantly, developed a phenomenal friendship. And Chase is someone who I really respect in the field. Chase, we're really excited to have you on set today, sharing your knowledge and expertise. Maybe before we get into it, you could share just a little bit about where you've been and where you currently serve now.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first and foremost, pumped to be on. Really excited to share some knowledge and talk shop with you. So previously, leading up to where I'm at now, I was an intern at the University of Kansas with football for about 8-9 months, and then baseball and golf at the University of South Alabama.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Chase, one thing, working with you that I learned a lot from was dealing with overhead athletes. Of course, as somebody who has a lot of experience training baseball athletes and also playing the sport yourself, a place that I feel like you've got a great expertise in, and obviously by the nature of your position now, something that you do at a really high level. So maybe we could start by just talking about what are some of the special considerations that you have for training baseball athletes that might look different than training a standard multi-sport athlete?
Yeah. So the biggest thing that we look for with our guys and just in the baseball realm in general is first and foremost is throwing mechanics. And so we don't really have, there's no one size fits all model because a lot of times guys, they move differently. Everybody's different, just like with any other sport. But a big thing is looking at their throwing mechanics because there's always some fundamental movement patterns that need to be set when they're throwing. So no matter how they finish or start and get there, like it's gotta have a good point to where we're checking the boxes and those fundamental movement patterns. And once those movement patterns are established, like it's got to be quality, right? So a big thing is, sometimes guys, if they start having elbow pain, shoulder pain, even sometimes there's just some low back and hip pain due to their makeup and how they throw. And so we want to look and see, the quality of the foundational movement patterns, and then how can we build upon that to implement in their throwing mechanics to make them effective. A lot of times the guys got to where they're at just by natural ability, but it's how can we keep them healthy and build more of a good base to carry out what they need to do when they're throwing. So with throw mechanics, quality movement patterns, the next one kind of go into is workload management. So obviously throwing a baseball is one of the most damaging movements. So we want to balance out that workload because you can really push too far too quick, and then next thing you know, a guy's got arm problems, elbows starting to hurt, shoulders hurting. So then we're working backwards from where we're actually trying to go. So that's kind of a big piece there as well. The last two that we really focus on that I think are crucial are direct training of the rotator cuff, scap, low trap, and pretty much the whole posterior chain. A big piece that is overlooked is, like I said, throwing a baseball, an incredibly damaging movement. It only takes a few newtons to pop your UCL in the elbow, and so everything that helps build that resiliency is all the strength built around it. And so we got to make sure there's proper function of the scap, proper retraction, shoulder abduction when they're throwing, proper external rotation in the shoulder, and then proper internal rotation when they throw. And we also like to hammer a lot of low trap stuff so it can assist that scap in that upper rotation and get to the positions we need to throw. So that kind of blends everything together with proper, and with that comes back to the quality movement patterns, right? We want to see that our athletes, the scap moves properly when they're doing drills and assessments, doing things in the weight room, and then we want scapulohumeral rhythm. So we want to make sure the scap and the humeral to move itself to get to good positions and throw the baseball at a highly effective level.
Yeah, there's a lot there. Coming back to where you kind of started off talking about those fundamental movement patterns, I think there's something underneath that. Like maybe my first question would just be, do those fundamental patterns look different from baseball versus, say, football? Because that's another sport that you spend a lot of time with. Do those patterns look different? And And what are those patterns?
They look a little bit different. You're, looking at a pitcher compared to a quarterback. So I was like a pitcher, you got some guys that have really long arm motions, some guys that are short and quick. But especially in the game, you're comparing to the game of football for a quarterback. He doesn't have time to get a really long arm and throw the ball. It's more the small J, if you will. Like my coach in high school used to call it just a small little J to get to position and go. So there's a little bit different pronation of the hand when throwing a football compared to a baseball. Now, there's certain baseball pitches that mimic that, but a lot of times you'll see, for a small example, for any of the baseball people out there, is usually a baseball player that throws a football really good. Usually his fastball has more of a cut to it. So it's kind of what we call a cutter. It kind of has a little more run because of the pronation. And so those mechanics come into play. But in terms of taking care of the arm, it's all the same thing, right? And that goes for any overhead athlete, right? We gotta hammer the serratus, the scap. We gotta have things that stabilize the shoulder, things that get the shoulder and the elbow into good positions to make sure we're getting to where we need to, and we're staying healthy all at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So, talking about performance variables, of course, every strength conditioning coach out there, and really anybody who's probably responsible for general fitness at varying levels, has different markers, of course, of performance variables, things that we're looking at that help us to decide whether progress is being made and if progress is in the right areas, the things that are responsible for key performance. And so, with your guys, what are some of those variables that you're chasing after that, you find to be important for baseball athletes?
Yeah. So we use force plates here. We use Vol Performance force plates. And so we have our guys jump at the beginning of the year with their assessments. And then when throughout our fall season, we jump every 3 weeks. And then in season, we jump once a week so we can monitor, track progress and fatigue throughout the whole year or whole in season. But a big thing on the force plates is we're looking at concentric impulse, rate of force development, and their eccentric and concentric durations. So a concentric impulse is a really big piece that the baseball realm has dove down just to see. We do concentric impulse at 100 meters per second or 100 milliseconds, and so we're looking at, baseball is a stop and start sport, right? And so everything, from a batting perspective, from pitching, you're almost at a complete standstill, and then boom, you've got to fire everything you can to make something happen, right? And so we look at those and kind of track that throughout the year to see, we go through a heavy strength phase and then we start implementing more power work. And as we do that, I look for correlations and see if their concentric impulse is going up, if their jump height's going up. And a lot of, as that starts to climb, their velo starts to climb. So they start throwing the ball harder, they get more spin on the, and they in return start feeling, if a guy has a history of elbow pain or shoulder pain, he doesn't tend to have as much of that pain anymore, just because he's moving more efficiently. He has the strength to produce that high amount of power that he needs to without putting so much stress on the arm. And so we kind of really hammer those, just trying to see how powerful we can make guys. I think sometimes people don't realize how strong and powerful baseball players really are. I mean, we've probably had 8 or 9 pitchers this year, split squatting about 435, 440 pounds for 2 reps each leg. And so it's a big thing that, you have some guys out there, super skinny and tiny, but they move so well that when they throw, things are effortless, but they're still really strong. Want to make sure that we're strong enough to be in the positions we need to be in. And that's just fundamental for any sport, right? Like, you can't expect your body to perform something at a high level that takes a lot of stress and a big toll if we're not strong enough to meet those demands. And we're not strong enough to be resistant against the chance of injury. And so we hammer a lot of arm strength with that and a lot of stability. I think stability is a very big piece that we miss out on, just because of everything that's being involved. Like, that the shoulder's got to be stable, right? The more stable the shoulder is, the less stress on the shoulder and the elbow that you'll have, and the more efficient you'll be with your mechanics and your throws. And that goes for baseball players, for quarterbacks, everything being efficient, the body moving all together, start from the ground up until we get to the release point of the ball.
When I hear you talk about this, I hear, you talk about what really sounds like fundamental, basic things carrying over to complex performance. Just listening to you talk about the ability for the body to stabilize and then take that and apply that to, your practice and throwing. Listening to you talk about the ability to express force from your lower body and how that shows up in, key things, whether it's sprinting or even hitting velocity. And so kind of this balance, and I think this is a conversation that is ongoing in our field, is like the general versus specific conversation. Like how specific does training need to be? How much does general exercises carry over to specific sport practice? Where do you feel like you stand in that conversation in terms of, what you're doing from a training standpoint and how that's specifically shown up in sport? Like, where do you feel like that conversation, I guess, where do you fall in that conversation with your guys and how you train?
So I'm a little, I'd like to say I'm a little less progressive than what most probably baseball strength or overhead athlete, strength coaches that deal with overhead athletes. I think we've kind of shifted to everything's about mobility and being flexible and moving well and things like that. But then, you spending an hour on a yoga mat to work on your mobility is not going to make you throw a baseball harder. It's not going to make you hit it further, right? Like there is an important piece to mobility, but we've got to be strong, right? Like yes, of course, here at South, like we still sprint, we do our arm care, we do our strength and power work in the weight room. But at the end of the day, strength is always going to win out. Like that person that's stronger and more powerful than you is going to win out. And even if in that situation, when you start talking about just the arm care and performance and things like that, like the stronger you are, the better you're going to be able to maintain those positions for a longer amount. And so for us, it's, we want to hammer the found. Like I tell our guys at the beginning of the year with our team meeting, I'm like, look, I don't care if you're the projected first overall pick in this year's upcoming draft. I don't care. You're going to move well. Like you're going to hammer these foundations. I use the term to our recruits when I see them is, you wouldn't build. Somebody gave you the chance to build. They'll build you your dream house for free. You just have to. You got sand and concrete. You're not going to build your dream house on sand. So our body, to me, like in the sport that that athletes play, like this is your dream sport. This is your dream life, your dream house. Your body's your house. So we want to build it on a solid foundation. Because once that foundation's set, then we can branch out in that tree, driving other performance variables, and be efficient when you're pitching. You got to be efficient when you're swinging, and so you got to still put a lot of pressure towards your sport itself and get good at that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well put. Something that I feel like you kind of alluded to and all that too is the culture. Talking about what your team culture looks like from your most elite of players on the top end of things all the way to your incoming freshmen. What would you say is the impact of culture when it comes to what you're doing in the weight room and how that shows up, on game day and performance?
Yep. A big piece, I think, everything for me, again, I tell recruits when they come to visit, I tell our players is that, obviously I'm a little biased because I'm the strength coach, but, when we're in the weight room, 45 pounds is 45 pounds. It's not going to lie to you. It's not going to change who it is. It's not going to pick a side. It's going to line you up every day, and it's going to bring you what it's got. And that's what it's got, right? And so with us in the weight room, I tell our guys that, I don't care if we went 0-3, if we got swept over the weekend and lost all 3 games, or if we won all 3 games, or if you haven't had a hit in 3 weeks, or you haven't been out there, you haven't been good enough to touch the mound in 3 weeks. You're going to, when you walk into the weight room, I want your 100% effort for that day. Some days it may be different than others, but I want 100% of what you can give me that day, because that's just our standard and that's our expectation, right? Like when you and all this stuff I'm saying, I tell our guys, when you step out there on your, and it can apply to really any sport, but when you step out there on the field to compete, you don't get to tell, I don't get to tell you, hey Tyler, all I can give is like 75% today. Would you mind doing 75% too? Absolutely not. Like we both may feel terrible, but is my 100% for that day going to be better than my competition's 100% for that day? And so everybody gets beaten down and broken and hurt and tired. And, there's been plenty of research that shows sometimes, like even for us, our own research, we've had guys that have set hitting exit velo PRs and throwing velo PRs when they feel like they're at about 80, 90% of feeling 100%. And it just shows that, your body's going to perform at that higher level. We know that the human body is the most incredible machinery on the planet. And like it can handle so much more stress than what we believe. And so with our culture, we're big on the details. As you can tell, like our plate, like my plate's behind us, like we have them all straightened up when guys finished. And I tell our guys, hey, details matter in all sports, but especially baseball. Like you getting a home run or a ground ball can be the difference in, not even a centimeter of the barrel. And so we want to make sure that, our details are in our entire process. We're on time. We're straightening things up, need to be straightened up. We're cleaning things up, need to be cleaned. If I tell you to write this down on your sheet to record your workout, that's what we're doing. If your teammate's slacking off and I, just told the cues and they're slacking off, then we're on top of that, right? And so the details come into a big piece. And then just like I mentioned earlier, the 100%, daily effort. Like, what do you have for that day? Like, what can you give me? So I can assure you that guy out there is giving his 100%. So what do you have? And so the weight room in here, I think, is a big factor for helping our guys understand. A lot of times you'll come in the weight room and workouts get hard. Like especially in the fall, I purposely do some workouts that for these guys, they come in the next day and it's like, Coach, I can barely walk. I can barely move. Like I'm hurting. I'm like, good. Like you're learning how to hurt. You learn how to suffer a little bit. And then this is going to make you that much better. So in competition, whether it's baseball, football, basketball, in baseball, it's the bottom of the ninth inning, the game's tied and everybody's tired. Third game of the series, like you've got to execute. You're running on fumes. You got to execute. The same thing in football, right? There's 2 seconds left on the clock. You're at the 1 yard line. Everybody's tired. It's, third or fourth down. Like we have to get this into the end zone to win. Like how deep are you going to dig to give that last little bit of effort? And so I think in the weight room, we can kind of callous that mind to see, hey, well, you got 3 reps right here. You did 2. And now I know I got to buckle down for this third, and it's going to be hard. I hate the word grind, but you got to suffer through a little bit. You got to push and see what you're made of. And I think that teaches athletes that, a callous mind that I can go so much further than what I think I can if I just keep my head down and keep working. They start to see like that culture builds and that translates. And so I love talking about and things like that, but to sum all that up, I think that the biggest role that plays is that like when you step out there on the field and you're against competition, your culture's strong enough where everybody's playing for each other. I know that my back's against the wall. I'm on fumes, but so are the guys behind me. But they're still like, hey, let's go, one more pitch, let's go. They're in the zone with me and they're in the trenches with me, and they want to see us win and get after it.
Well put. Well put. Yeah. And I think that's one thing that I've really come to respect and appreciate about you, knowing you as long as I have now, is just as times change, you've really clung to some of the tried and proven things in this field that have been successful over time and have not run from it. I think a lot of young athletes can really benefit from listening to what you have to say from that standpoint as well. Like understanding that like you can have the best program in the entire world, the most specific program in the entire world. But listening to you speak today, like you talk about how doing the fundamental things that allow all great athletes to become who they are. So whether you are going to be drafted this year or you're a freshman. You have to learn how to move right?
Yeah.
And whether you are that same high profile dude or not, you're going to have to learn how to do the hard things because that's what sport is. Sport isn't always sweet. Sport isn't always nice. And there's going to come times where you've got to be able to go into a deeper spot than where you're most comfortable and still find a way to win. And I love that. I love that. I think a lot of young athletes miss the mark on that now. And it's not something that's always forecasted as much as it used to be. So I definitely appreciate you sharing that piece on the back end.
Yeah, so I think, like to your point, the athletes can learn from that. Is I think in this world today, like for example, social media, uh, it can be there's pros and cons to it, right? There's pros where you can network yourself, and like for us coaches, put out information for other coaches or younger aspiring coaches to learn, to communicate, to network. But then there's also cons to it, to where you see, an athlete sees some social media influencer that has no background in real training whatsoever, and they're just going to follow along with that idea. Like for example, I got guys all the time that come in and want to show me some crazy drill they saw on TikTok, and I'm like, okay, well, first it's TikTok. Two, let me see what the drill is. And they're doing some crazy movement thing, and it's just something crazy. Like, well, yeah, the coach it says they guarantee like an extra 3 or 4 miles per hour on my velo. And I'm like, okay, that's cool, but I can give you 7 or 8 miles per hour on your velo if you could squat more than your body weight. You could bench press more than 135 pounds. You're 200 pounds and you can barely get 135 for 5 reps. So it's like I think the work for athletes has become, they look at what's really pretty compared to what's most effective. And so I tell our guys, hey, like it's about what's effective. Like that other team we played, they may do pretty training and they have all the bells and whistles, and that's cool. But last I checked, we just beat them all 3 games. We're more physical than they are. We're stronger. We hit the ball harder. We throw it harder, and we run faster. And we're not in. We have less injuries than they do. And so it's a balance between yeah, you can sprinkle a little pretty in there to keep them locked in, but it's about what's effective. And a lot of times the teams or athletes that chase the effectiveness are the ones end up having more success than the ones that try to chase what's just so pretty, because they skip everything that gets them to what can be pretty. They skip every bit of that, especially like in the Major League Baseball realm with like our pitchers all the time talking. It's how is this so and so pitcher so good? It's like, well, look how well he moves. Like, look how well his body syncs up all the way from the ground to the point where he releases the baseball. Like, he didn't get there just because that's just a pretty motion and go. Like, he's strong enough to get to those pretty positions. And so we want to chase that effectiveness and not just what's so pretty.
Yeah, no question. No question. And I think as time goes on, that message is going to become increasingly more important because
Yeah,
social media is
no
not
doubt.
going anywhere.
No doubt.
Not going anywhere. Well, that's powerful, man, and I appreciate you sharing with us today. I think there's a lot of great things that I know I certainly took from this conversation. Before I let you go today, Chase, if you just care to share kind of what platforms you're all available that people can follow along with you on. Um, I believe you're on Instagram. Is there any other preferable social media platforms that people can find you?
No, I mean, really, Instagram. I really have a bad habit of putting stuff out sometimes, just because once I get in here and get coaching, man, like I set the playlist, let it ride for the music, and then I'm just so locked and zoned on coaching that I'm flying around doing stuff. And so I don't post as much, but I'm always open to DMs and sharing things. But uh, you can find me at Chase_Barber12 on Instagram. I've also got Facebook, old school. Everybody's got a little bit of that Facebook. That's how you keep up with the oldies. We're getting old in our age, so that's how you keep up with them. But it's just Chase Barber on Facebook, and then I also have Twitter, but I don't use it too much. And then I can always be reached by email, and that's just chasebarber@southalabama.edu. And I'm always open to questions and sharing things and meeting and things like that. So
Good deal. Well, again, thanks for hopping on today, Chase. It's been a pleasure, man. I know we'll be chopping it up again here real soon, but appreciate you hopping on today.
for sure, hey, thanks for having me, man. I enjoyed it. Hopefully, hopefully people can get some, everybody can get some good information from it.
No doubt. No doubt. All right, brother. Talk soon.
See you, brother. Appreciate it.